Good morning and welcome to the devotional for today. We are going to be thinking about 1 Kings chapter 18 verses 1 to 16, Obadiah of Samaria. It is Obadiah's lasting misfortune that when we take his measure, he is not standing alone by himself. Otherwise we might have thought him a giant. But unfortunately for Obadiah, he's always standing alongside Elijah, a giant indeed. Let's begin with Obadiah's testimony. The Holy Spirit says that Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. Just the same, Obadiah was afraid of King Ahab and even more terrified of Jezebel. The two of them were a formidable pair. Jezebel was determined to stamp out the worship of Jehovah in Israel and had imported more than 800 pagan priests and prophets to accomplish that end. Obadiah was more afraid of her than he was of God. Small wonder. Even Elijah ran away from her. Obadiah was an official at Ahab's court. He ran the royal household. He knew how matters stood. He was afraid of Ahab. Ahab was afraid of Jezebel. Jezebel was afraid of nobody. Though Obadiah's fear of God was flawed, the Holy Spirit, nevertheless, bears witness to the fact that Obadiah feared the Lord greatly. There were 100 Hebrew prophets in Israel whom Jezebel wanted to put to death, and it was a criminal offence to help them. They'd gone into hiding, and Jezebel's secret police scoured the country looking for them. And there was one man who knew where they were, Obadiah. He had hidden them. Moreover, he took advantage of his position in Ahab's steward to smuggle food and drink to them. God honoured him for that. Such was his testimony. He had faith, but he lived with fear as well. Next we see Obadiah's task. He was ordered by Ahab to search the whole country in hope of finding enough grass to feed the royal horses and mules. A well-nigh hopeless task. The drought Elijah had imposed on Israel had lasted now for 3.5 years, and the land was bare. Obadiah did not have the courage to point out to Ahab that it was his apostasy that was responsible for the state of the affairs in Israel. He went off on his hopeless errand, and then he met Elijah. He could hardly believe his eyes. There was an enormous price on Elijah's head. He was the object of a massive nationwide manhunt. Go and tell Ahab I'm here, he said. This brings us to Obadiah's terror. Why, he said. Ahab's police are looking for you everywhere. Ahab's ambassadors have agreements with all the surrounding countries to extradite you should you surface in one of them. This is a trick. I'll go and get the king. And the moment my back is turned, the Spirit of God will whisk you away, and I'll be left to face the fury of Ahab and Jezebel. What have I sinned that you would betray me like that? Is this my reward for hiding those prophets? Well, Obadiah had his day in the spotlight. Elijah lived in it. Obadiah, we read, went to meet Ahab. And that's the last we hear of him. Obadiah went to meet Ahab. Then we read, and Ahab went to meet Elijah. There lies the difference. Obadiah was ruled by caution. Elijah was ruled by conviction. Obadiah was one of the 7,000 the Lord talked about, men who had not bowed the knee to Baal. That's the best we can say about him. Elijah took heaven by storm. Obadiah limped along the highway home. Still, God gives him credit where credit is due. He feared the Lord greatly, far more than most of his countrymen did. God writes it into his book. So the question is, what does he write into his book about us? Thank you for joining me today. See you tomorrow.